Today, we pay a premium for distance, convenience, and instant delivery, but this modern life is fragile. Forget everything you thought you knew about self-sufficiency. For centuries, the people in the Swiss Alps lived by 15 unbreakable rules, a lost masterclass in endurance that could fundamentally change how you prepare for the future. The twofold harvest. Apple and cherry sentinels. There was a time when the first melt of the Alpine snow brought not just a thaw, but the promise of a feast. The valley floors, cradled by towering peaks, would erupt in a tidal wave of apple and cherry blossom, the true beginning of the year's work. This wasn't just decorative gardening. These orchards were the foundational cornerstone of the village pantry. Today, fruit comes in plastic clamshells, bred for size and shelf life. But in those mountain hamlets, these two trees were grown for self-sufficiency and preservation. Apples, hardier and perfect for long storage, were pressed for cider or sliced thin and dried on racks, their concentrated sugar keeping them edible through the deepest winter. Cherries, lighter and more delicate, were quickly transformed into jams, brandies, and the clear, potent spirit known as schnapps, a necessary tonic and antiseptic in isolated homes. The villagers understood that the sun only hit the valley floor for a few precious months, so the trees had to be dependable, yielding an excess that could be converted into durable currency. This twofold harvest meant that even when the passes were blocked and the world was white, the table was never truly bare. It was a lesson in forecasting and respect. Plant the orchard today, and it will feed your children's children. This enduring system relied on more than just fruit. It relied on proximity. The houses themselves were clustered together, forming a warm, tight-knit circle, a survival choice that proved just as vital as the harvest. The last bastion, the tight-knit village circle. Today we pay a premium for distance, believing isolation is freedom. But for those facing 10-foot snowdrifts, a neighbor wasn't a distraction. They were the fire insurance, the snowplow, and the only hope for survival. Walk into a traditional Alpine hamlet and you'll notice something striking. The homes are tightly clustered, almost shoulder to shoulder, forming a dense ring against the vast and different mountainside. Why sacrifice space for proximity? The answer is simple. Community was infrastructure. The villagers knew that their greatest resource wasn't the land they farmed, but the people who farmed beside them. This architectural choice was a survival mechanism engineered to pool effort and conserve heat. Sharing a common stone wall or a sheltered narrow path meant that when the snow piled up 10 feet high, clearing the way became a collective, manageable task, not an individual death sentence. These homes, built from massive timber and set upon thick stone foundations, weren't just shelter. They were multi-generational anchors designed to hold firm for hundreds of years. This closeness fostered an unspoken social contract where a neighbor's success meant your own security, creating a self-reinforcing circle of mutual dependence. In the valley, isolation was a weakness, but the tight-knit circle was the last bastion, the only structure sturdy enough to withstand the relentless cycle of Alpine life. And that life required fuel. Before everything else, these homes needed to be warm. In the deep winter, the only thing more important than food storage was the consistent, reliable fire at the heart of every single house. The fire's heart. The geometry of a winter's woodpile. In the modern home, the thermostat is an afterthought, a plastic box we adjust without thinking about the power plant miles away. But imagine a time when the difference between life and death lay in the geometry of a massive, perfectly stacked woodpile. This ritual, central to Alpine existence, was not about convenience. It was about survival planning on a 6-month scale. The wood stove was the undisputed heart of the home, both literally and figuratively. Unlike modern furnaces that only provide passive warmth, the wood stove demanded daily interaction. It was the source of heat, the cooker for the evening meal, and the gathering place for the family. Its efficiency was measured not in British thermal units, but in its ability to sustain life through bitter cold. This dependence fostered a deep respect for the forest. Wood gathering wasn't just chopping, it was a complex process of sustainable forestry. Trees were selectively harvested, often on annual rotation, ensuring the health and future yield of the communal forest plots. The wood was then split and stacked with meticulous care, neat, air-drying piles that showed off the family's diligence and foresight. If the stack was short, winter would be long. The cycle of warmth depended entirely on the purity of another element. Once the wood was burning, the need for cooking and drinking instantly pointed to the cold, clear water flowing down from the high mountain peaks. The mountain's gift, the unseen vein of cold, clear water. Today, water is an abstract convenience, something that appears instantly, sterilized and regulated when we turn a chrome handle. But in the Alpine valleys, water was not a utility. It was a direct gift from the mountain, a cold, clear, unseen vein of life channeled through ancient stone. Before complex waterworks, villages relied on gravity-fed spring systems, nature's original, self-sustaining plumbing. The pure, melted snow filtered slowly through miles of rock and alpine soil before emerging from the earth, clean and icy cold. This pristine state meant the water required no filtration and no chemical treatment. It simply flowed, dependable year-round, directly from the source. The most visible sign of this system was the communal fountain or trough, usually carved from a massive, hollowed-out log. This wasn't just a watering hole for livestock. It was the village meeting place. Women came with copper buckets to fill their stores, men discussed the harvest, and children played around the eternally running stream. It was where life paused and flowed together, fueled by the freshest water on earth. The quality of that water defined the quality of life itself. But while the village drew its water from the earth, it had to store its food within the earth, requiring a completely different kind of architecture. A cool, dark place to protect the year's labor. The subterranean treasury, nature's original refrigerator. We measure a good kitchen by its stainless steel appliances and how much energy they consume. Before this era of constant cold, families stored their bounty the ancient way, by building a subterranean treasury that required zero electricity. This was the legendary root cellar, often dug directly beneath the house or carved into a hillside. The root cellar maintained a stable, cool temperature and high humidity year-round. This was the key to long-term self-sufficiency, allowing the Alpine family to survive the 6-month winter blockade. Imagine descending into that cool, dark space and seeing a breathtaking inventory of the summer's hard work. Bushels of potatoes and carrots layered in sand, cured meats hanging like ancient tapestries, and row upon row of preserved fruit and pickled vegetables. The root cellar wasn't just practical, it was a place of pride. It showcased the diligence of the homeowner, the assurance that the family was secure. It was a tangible testament to the link between the earth and the dinner plate. Without this constant temperature, the harvest would rot, the family would starve, and the village would fail. But beyond the preserved fruits and vegetables, the most crucial sustenance stored, and the greatest export of the Alpine community, came from the animals grazing high above. The brown bell, the currency of Alpine milk. If you close your eyes and listen to the summer Alps, you hear the ringing of the brown bells, a simple musical sound that signals far more than just a grazing herd. The cow was not merely livestock, it was the engine of the local economy, the source of wealth, and the guarantor of the village's nutritional survival. The short summer season required turning fleeting grass into permanent food. Milk, rich from the high mountain pastures, a tradition known as transhumance, was too perishable to last. The solution was the timeless art of cheese making. This process was not just a recipe, it was a high-value preservation method. Transforming gallons of milk into massive wheels of Gruyere or Emmental meant storing nutrients indefinitely. A wheel of hard cheese was more valuable than gold. It was currency that could be eaten and traded through the winter. Each wheel told a story of the summer's warmth, the richness of the Alpine flora, and the skill of the cheesemaker. This daily dedication to dairy created an entire self-sustaining ecosystem. The rich, nutrient-dense products that resulted were the lifeblood of the people. But getting the cheese, the wood, and the hay down from the steep summer slopes required a specialized way of moving, a form of transportation built entirely on endurance and utility. Boots and bells, the path, paved by foot and sleigh. Forget measuring distance in miles. In the Alps, distance was measured in pain, fatigue, and the threat of an avalanche. Before roads, their transportation system was built on a terrifying simplicity. The boot, the pack horse, and the massive groaning wooden sled. In the steep, uncompromising terrain of the Alps, transportation was measured by two things: endurance and utility. The paths that connected the hamlets were not built for automobiles. They were built for longevity and load-bearing, designed to be negotiated slowly and deliberately by human and animal power. The reliance on horse-drawn sleighs in winter was especially crucial. A sturdy wooden sleigh could glide over deep snow, carrying firewood, cheese, and supplies that would be impossible to haul on a wheeled cart. The sled was the original heavy-duty logistics system. This slow, deliberate movement was a key part of the Alpine mindset. Since travel took time, life was planned around it. There was no need for rush, only for certainty. Every journey was a calculated effort, and every path was an inherited structure built on centuries of practical experience. This emphasis on simple, robust transport reinforced the deep need for preparedness, a philosophy that dictated the entire seasonal calendar. Because of this necessary slowness, summer was a frenzy of activity, securing enough resources to endure the great pause, the long sleep demanded by the 6-month winter. The great pause, the rhythm of the 6-month stockpile. Imagine having no Amazon, no grocery store delivery, and no escape for 180 consecutive days. Summer wasn't a holiday. It was a desperate 5-month race to secure resources before the great pause began. But in the high Alps, the season dictated a primal truth. Summer was for work, and winter was for survival, demanding a total retreat into the home. This was the great pause. Imagine preparing your entire existence for a period of total isolation, where the only visitor is a 10-foot snowdrift. Every detail, from the height of the woodpile to the last jar of preserved beans, was checked and double-checked against the certainty of months of being cut off. This deep-seated planning mindset extended to the animals, requiring a calculated stockpile of hay and fodder necessary to feed the livestock until spring. Once the snow started, the pace of life changed entirely. The frenzy of outward labor ceased. Instead, the Alpine community turned inward. This time was dedicated to maintenance, inward craft, and resourcefulness, mending tools, spinning wool, and knitting. It wasn't idleness. It was a necessary reprioritization of skills. It was a time when the practical skills learned in childhood became the bedrock of the family's security. Because every member of the village had to be a contributor, the transfer of knowledge wasn't academic, it was an absolute necessity passed down through the living classroom. The living classroom. Lessons taught by hands and seasons. We obsess over standardized tests, but what good is abstract knowledge when the winter wind is tearing the shingles off your home? The true education in the Alpine valleys was a matter of life and death, taught in the living classroom. In the Alpine villages, the most valuable education was conducted in the living classroom, where lessons were taught by hands and seasons. Knowledge was not printed in textbooks. It was embedded in the apprenticeship system. A young person's education was centered entirely on utility and tradition. The boy learned the difficult art of dry stacking stone walls from his father. The girl learned the complex process of turning milk into aged butter from her mother. They didn't just study carpentry, they built the fence that kept the herd safe. They didn't just learn botany, they harvested the herbs that would save a life. The wisdom of the elders, the knowledge of weather patterns, herd movements, and mending techniques was treated with utmost respect because it was literally the collective knowledge necessary for community survival. Every child was a functional contributor, and the value of their labor was the true measure of their readiness for adulthood. This deep integration of skills meant that no task was ever performed alone. When heavy labor was needed, the family didn't hire a contractor. They relied on the immediate, tangible promise of the barn-raising bond. The barn-raising bond. When neighbors were your only lifeline, we might drop off a zucchini on a neighbor's porch as a kind gesture, but that is a soft exchange compared to the mandatory, life-sustaining labor sharing of the Alpine village. When a family's barn needed rebuilding after a heavy snow, or when a high meadow needed to be cleared for the spring grazing, the entire hamlet turned out. This wasn't charity. It was the barn-raising bond. This system was an unspoken, non-negotiable social contract built on reciprocity and immediate cooperation. If you show up with your axe and your strength today, your neighbors will show up with theirs tomorrow. It was a tangible lifeline. You help a neighbor secure their winter hay supply, and you ensure that the entire village has enough to survive the deep freeze. There was no time or money wasted on transactions. There was only shared effort. Beyond the sheer labor, these collective workdays often turned into major social events, reinforcing the tight-knit circle. The hard work was usually followed by communal feasting, where the strong ties of the community were celebrated. This was their insurance, policy against disaster. Neighbors were, quite literally, their only lifeline. But their self-sufficiency wasn't limited to food and labor. Even basic medicine was homegrown, harvested from the steep slopes and preserved in the wild apothecary. The wild apothecary, foraging the high-altitude garden. Today, a headache sends us straight to the pharmacy counter, relying on chemical solutions manufactured far away. But not so long ago, every Alpine home was a self-contained doctor's office, and their medicine cabinet was the surrounding meadow and forest, a vast, forgotten resource known as the wild apothecary. Before commercial medicine was available, families relied on ancestral knowledge of Alpine herbs. This wasn't just a quaint custom, it was a necessary aspect of self-reliance. They knew exactly which high-altitude flowers, roots, and leaves to forage for healing and health. Specific plants were harvested and carefully dried to create effective teas and tinctures. For instance, knowing the location of gentian roots was vital for digestion, and chamomile was essential for calming an unsettled stomach. This expertise turned health into a personal responsibility. It required deep knowledge of the seasonal cycles and a profound respect for the wild. It was a tradition of sustainable harvesting, ensuring that the necessary remedies would return year after year. The entire community was linked by this ancient botanical wisdom, making their health as self-contained as their food and heat. This enduring mindset, this commitment to permanence and self-sufficiency, was evident in everything they did, right down to the fundamental principles used to design the very shelter that kept them safe, the Alpine chalet. Built to last, the enduring art of the Alpine chalet. We live in an age of disposable homes, built quickly and designed to last 30 years. The Alpine village rejected this fleeting notion. They built for permanence, creating shelters that stood as monuments to endurance, the enduring art of the traditional Alpine chalet. These homes were not constructed from imported materials. They were built entirely from the environment around them. Stone foundations, often dry stacked without mortar, anchored the structure firmly against the mountain, resisting movement and protecting against moisture. Above this, the heavy timber framework was crafted from local wood, carefully aged and cured to resist the harshest weather. This process wasn't just construction, it was an act of generational investment. Every architectural detail had a practical purpose. The low, deep eaves protected the walls from driving rain and massive snow loads, creating a critical airspace. These homes were designed not for fashion, but to withstand 1,000 consecutive winters. They housed not just one family, but multiple generations, passing down the structure alongside the stories and tools it contained. The chalet was a teaching tool, a massive display of respect for materials. This philosophy of quality over convenience extended far beyond the house itself, into every tool they owned and every job they performed. The maker's mark, tools that lasted a lifetime. We are drowning in plastic shovels and disposable utensils, tools designed to be replaced, not repaired. Alpine life operated on the opposite philosophy. Here, the craftsman's object was not a product. It was an artifact imbued with the maker's mark, built to last a lifetime and then be passed down. Walk into an old Alpine workshop, and you wouldn't find a jumble of cheaply bought items. You would find heavy, ergonomic, hand-forged tools. A scythe or an axe was not merely a piece of steel, it was a sculpture of utility, perfectly balanced and designed to perform a single difficult job with efficiency. The village blacksmith and the carpenter were highly valued professionals because the quality of their work directly impacted the family's survival. This commitment to quality over quantity created an enduring culture of repair and maintenance. A handle was replaced, a blade was sharpened, and a shovel was mended, not discarded. The pride of ownership came not from buying something new, but from inheriting a tool that already had 2 generations of honest work embedded in its wood grain and steel. When the heavy work was done, and the long, cold nights set in, these industrious people did not stop. They turned their attention to the simple, profound pleasures of the candlelight hour. the candlelight hour. Tales told when the snow flies. When the alpine snow sealed the village like a tomb, the only light came from the fire, and the only signal was the human voice. This enforced stillness brought a forgotten skill back to life, the art of human connection. The alpine winter enforced a return to the oldest pleasure of all, human connection and the art of storytelling. This was the candlelight hour. As the fire crackled in the wood stove, the central gathering spot, the family and sometimes neighbors would gather around the warmth. The hands that spent the day mending tools or spinning wool were now busy with card games, knitting, or simple whittling. This wasn't just passive leisure, it was communal leisure, woven directly into the fabric of the home. Most importantly, the long nights were the season for passing on culture. Grandparents would share local folklore, ancient legends, and the crucial practical wisdom learned from a life lived on the slopes. Every tale reinforced the values of resourcefulness and community. The darkness and the silence outside made the connection inside the circle of light feel incredibly precious. These intimate hours, rich with tradition, bring us back to the core message of alpine life. It all flowed from a single, enduring philosophy, a guiding principle that determined every harvest and every barn raising, the last lesson of the mountains. The last lesson, following the ancient alpine clock. The Swiss Alpine village is not merely a picturesque postcard of aged wood and pristine snow. It is a profound, unbroken masterclass in living by nature's rhythm, a lesson we have all but forgotten in our rush for instant gratification. This is the simple wisdom that governed every decision, from planting the cherry stone to curing the cheese. The ancient alpine clock dictated a cyclical existence where everything was linked. The spring melt fueled the water trough, the summer grass fed the cow's milk became the currency, and the wood from the forest provided the heat for the home. There were no shortcuts, no external dependencies, only a meticulous, year-after-year commitment to self-sustaining life. The village thrived because its inhabitants were deliberate, treating time and resources with the utmost respect. Every house built, every tool maintained, and every winter planned speaks to a life lived on purpose. This wisdom, forged in centuries of harsh, beautiful isolation, proves that genuine stability is found not in convenience, but in capability. We may live 1,000 miles from the high valleys, but the principles remain vital. Perhaps we should look past our supermarkets and our screens and rediscover the benefits of following that ancient rhythm, the forgotten, enduring logic of a life built to last. This week, find one process in your life that relies on instant convenience. Now, find the alpine way to make it self-sustaining. Start there. The alpine villages understood that genuine stability is not found in convenience, but in capability. If you find yourself questioning your own readiness, hit the like button and subscribe now, and join our community as we continue to unlock the forgotten blueprints for a life built to last.